It was a cold, rainy morning when Grace started her first day as a cleaner at the imposing finance company where her mother had worked years ago as a respected manager. Grace remembered her mother's stories well, tales of success and recognition, until the day everything changed. Grace's mother, Hazel, was an honest and dedicated woman known for her ethics and competence. But one day, an unfounded accusation of embezzlement shattered her career. Without concrete evidence or a fair investigation, Hazel was fired, humiliated, and left without her rights. The injustice ate away at her soul, plunging her into a spiral of hardship. The once stable and happy family sank into a sea of uncertainty and deprivation. Grace, a child at the time, watched her mother desperately search for a new job. But the stain of the false accusation followed her like a relentless shadow. Doors closed one after another, and Hazel's strength dwindled until she fell ill, exhausted and desolate. Grace grew up determined to right this wrong. She vowed to herself that somehow she would clear her mother's name and restore the dignity that had been stolen from her. Every day was a battle for Grace. She studied by candlelight, saved every penny, and nurtured a dream that seemed distant but not impossible. When she finally came of age, Grace decided that her first step would be to enter that company, no matter the position. It was as if she were stepping onto her mother's battlefield, determined to rewrite her family's history. With her heart full of memories and a spirit brimming with determination, Grace walked through the company's doors. Now, as a cleaner, what others saw as a humble job, Grace saw as an opportunity. She knew that to rise, she had to start from scratch, and she was willing to pay the price. As she cleaned the corridors and meeting rooms, Grace felt her mother's presence like a whisper of encouragement in her ear. And so, day after day, she dedicated herself not only to her job, but also to her dream, keeping the flame of hope and justice alive. Grace's routine at the company was arduous, but she faced it with silent determination. The cleaner's uniform hid her brilliance, but her eyes reflected an unquenchable flame. Each day, she started before dawn, gliding through the corridors before the executives arrived, cleaning and tidying without complaint. Dust, dirty floors, and piles of trash were her daily challenges, but she faced them with the grace of a warrior. While cleaning, Grace observed. She listened to conversations in the corridors, memorized discarded charts and reports, and whenever she had a break, she immersed herself in the economics books she carried with her. Her co-workers found it strange for a cleaner to have a Harvard finance book, but Grace never cared about curious glances or whispers. She had a clear goal and a promise to fulfill. Her mother's memory was her greatest strength and burden. Grace remembered the nights when Hazel, lying exhausted in bed, would tell her that education was the key to changing the world. These words echoed in her mind as she scrubbed floors and polished glass. Grace knew that the only way to correct the injustice done to her mother was to become the best at what her mother had been unjustly accused of failing. Grace's nights were devoted to study. A scholarship student at one of the world's most prestigious universities, she attended online classes and watched recorded lectures until late at night, often falling asleep over her books. The journey was exhausting, but Grace never complained. For her, every minute of lost sleep was a step closer to her goal. The work at the company was exhausting, but also a training ground. Every task performed perfectly, every detail noticed, was part of a larger plan. Grace was learning not just about cleaning, but about discipline, persistence, and resilience. She imagined herself as a spy in enemy territory, absorbing everything around her while preparing for the right moment to act. The executives passed by her unnoticed, but Grace noticed each one of them. She knew who the leaders were, who made the decisions, and who could help or hinder her in the future. As time passed, her confidence grew. She knew the opportunity would come, and when it did, she would be ready to seize it with both hands. Grace's life was a dance between her two realities, the dedicated cleaner and the prodigious student. Silently, she continued her fight, step by step, day by day, getting ever closer to the moment when she could claim the justice she so sought. The city lights shone outside as Grace, in her small room, immersed herself in her studies. The contrast between her daytime routine and her nights of dedication was enormous. During the day, she moved invisibly through the company's corridors, an unnoticed cleaner. But at night, Grace transformed into a voracious student, devouring knowledge that would make her an expert in economics. Few knew, but Grace had won a scholarship to Cambridge University, one of the most prestigious in the world. Her academic performance was impressive, and her professors described her as a prodigy. She mastered complex theories, solved intricate problems, and showed a deep understanding of economic dynamics. Each class attended, each book read, was a brick in the construction of a future she dreamed of achieving. In the company's corridors, Grace was not just a cleaner. She was an attentive observer, absorbing every detail of operations, discussions, and decisions. She could see what few could: the flaws in the systems, the missed opportunities, the poorly conceived strategies. Her mind worked tirelessly, connecting dots, creating solutions, devising plans. And although no one knew, Grace was preparing for something big. Weekends were dedicated to research projects, financial analyses, and market simulations. Grace had access to online resources and took advantage of every free minute to deepen her knowledge. She developed models, tested hypotheses, and wrote articles that could easily be published in academic journals. Her intelligence shone brightly, even if hidden from everyone's view. Grace had access to all areas of the company and always used her time to listen to the executives' conversations, not out of curiosity, but as a strategy. She hid in silent corners where she could pick up crucial information about the company's financial state. She knew the company was struggling, but also saw its potential for recovery. In her mind, Grace began to draw up a plan that could not only save the company, but also redeem her mother's name. The young woman was becoming a silent expert, a strategist hidden in plain sight. While others slept, she charted the path to redemption, a path that would lead her to confront those who wronged her mother and prove that true talent cannot be erased by any false accusation. Grace's hidden potential was about to emerge like a volcano, accumulating energy before an eruption. She knew the moment would come, the moment she would have to show the world what she was capable of, the moment when the silent cleaner would transform into a bold leader. And when that moment came, Grace would be ready to shine, not just for herself, but for all the injustice her mother suffered. News spread through the company's corridors like wildfire. An emergency meeting was scheduled to discuss the company's future. The company was on the brink of financial collapse, and the executives were preparing to make drastic decisions. Grace, always keeping her ears open, knew immediately that this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The night before the meeting, Grace barely slept. Her hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. She spent hours reviewing her notes, adjusting details in her charts, and polishing her presentation. Every slide, every word was meticulously planned. She knew she had only one chance to change everything, and she was determined not to waste it. When the day of the meeting arrived, Grace put on her cleaner's uniform for the last time. But in her backpack, she carried an elegant suit and a folder with all the documents she needed. She entered the cleaning room as usual, but emerged transformed, looking in the bathroom mirror. She saw a confident and determined woman, ready to face the challenge. The meeting started with a heavy atmosphere. The executives, with tired and worried faces, discussed possible cuts and closures. The voices were grave, the tension palpable. It was at this moment that Grace entered the room, interrupting the discussion. Everyone turned to see the young woman who dared to invade that exclusive space. "Excuse me," she said firmly, "but I think I have something that can help." There was a moment of incredulous silence, followed by murmurs. The CEO, surprised and somewhat irritated, allowed Grace to speak, perhaps more out of curiosity than anything else. Grace walked over to the projector, connected her laptop, and began her presentation. Her first words came out calmly and clearly. Grace detailed the company's financial situation with surgical precision, pointing out errors the executives had overlooked. Each slide showed detailed charts, in-depth analyses, and innovative solutions. Grace spoke about market opportunities, investment strategies, and smart cuts that could save the company without sacrificing jobs. The executives' faces changed from skepticism to surprise, then to admiration. The young cleaner was showing an understanding and vision that none of them had demonstrated. She spoke with authority, with a passion that came not just from knowledge but from a higher cause. Grace concluded her presentation with a clear strategy to pull the company out of crisis and lead it to a future of sustainable growth. The silence in the room was absolute. The executives were stunned, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. It was then that Grace delivered the final blow. "My name is Grace," she said, "and I am the daughter of Hazel, the former finance manager who was unjustly fired by this company. The same woman who dedicated her life to this place and was treated cruelly and unfairly." Her words resonated in the room like thunder. The executives were speechless, some with guilty looks, others with shock. Grace, maintaining her composure, continued, "This strategy 1% is mine, but it has a price. I want the company to pay triple the amount my mother lost when she was fired, and I want justice for her name." With those words, Grace closed her laptop and, with the folder under her arm, left the room, leaving the executives speechless. There was an air of honest and powerful revenge in her walk. She had not only shown her potential, but had also claimed her mother's dignity and legacy. The meeting room remained silent for long minutes after Grace's departure. The executives looked at each other, still trying to process what had just happened. The young cleaner had not only presented the most viable solution they had ever heard, but had also revealed a truth that left everyone uncomfortable and ashamed. As Grace descended the elevator, she took a deep breath, trying to calm the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She knew the moment of truth had arrived. The strategy she had spent nights and days perfecting was now in the minds of those who needed it most, but not in their hands. Across town, in a cozy cafe, Grace sat with a cup of tea in her hands. She watched the people outside, but her mind was on the meeting. With each sip, she remembered her mother, the struggles, the sleepless nights. She was about to close a chapter of her life, and emotions mingled in her heart. At the company, the executives finally recovered from the initial shock and began to discuss. Some were still skeptical, but most recognized the brilliance of Grace's strategy. The CEO, a pragmatic man, knew they couldn't ignore what they had just witnessed. He decided to call a new meeting, this time to make a definitive decision. Hours later, Grace's phone rang. It was a call from the company asking her to return for another conversation. Grace took a deep breath, finished her tea, and returned to the company. When she arrived, she was met with a formality she didn't expect. The looks of disdain and indifference had given way to expressions of respect and curiosity. In the CEO's large office, Grace was greeted by a table full of executives. The CEO began to speak, thanking her for the brilliant presentation and acknowledging the injustice done to her mother. He spoke about the need to correct past wrongs and look to the future with a new perspective. "Grace," the CEO solemnly said, "we have decided to accept your strategy, and we are willing to pay the price you stipulated." Grace kept her composure, but her heart was pounding. She listened attentively as the CEO continued, explaining that they would not only pay the requested amount, but also wanted to offer her a prominent position in the company as a partner and strategic advisor. "We know that your knowledge and passion are exactly what we need to guide this company to a better future," said the CEO, "and we want to apologize not just with words but with actions." Grace accepted the proposal with a firm nod, but inside she felt immense gratitude and relief. Her struggle and sacrifices had finally borne fruit. When the meeting ended, Grace left the office with an unparalleled sense of victory. The young cleaner who once went unnoticed through the company's corridors was now seen as the savior, the brilliant strategist who had rescued the company from ruin. Her journey of pain, sacrifice, and determination had finally reached a turning point. The following days were of intense transformation. Grace exchanged her cleaner's uniform for elegant clothes, external symbols of her new position. But the real change came from within. She took on her new role with the same humility and dedication she had while cleaning corridors. But now her responsibilities and impact were immeasurable. The company began to implement Grace's strategy immediately. Every step was executed with precision, and the results started to appear faster than many expected. Operations became more efficient, markets began to respond positively, and employee morale, once at rock bottom, started to rise. The company, once on the brink of bankruptcy, was now on a clear path to recovery and growth. But for Grace, the greatest victory was not just in the numbers or the new responsibilities. It was in the respect she now received, not just from the executives but from all the employees. From the directors to the cleaners, everyone saw her as an example of courage, intelligence, and integrity. Her mother's story also spread, and many expressed their support and regret for what had happened. Later that same day, Grace returned home to her old room, where she still kept memories of her mother. Grace placed Hazel's photo on the table, with tears in her eyes and a serene smile. "I did it, Mom," she said. "For us, for you." Her mother's image seemed to return her gaze with a glow of pride and love, as if saying that justice had finally been served. And with that, Grace felt she had finally restored her mother's honor and dignity, closing a cycle of pain and opening a new chapter of hope and success. Grace's story is not just one of revenge. It is a story of redemption, courage, and a love that transcended time and adversity. And so, Grace became not just a leader, but a symbol of hope and strength for all who knew her journey.